Hello, Leo.
Good morning. How's it going?
Yeah, very well, thank you. How are you?
That's quite a reading library behind you.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yes, I have a similar library that I never read. I'm more of an audiobook type guy.
Yeah, I've never really got my head around audios. I do lots of workouts, um, but I just never find I much rather listen to music rather than every time I listen to an audio, I need to write stuff down. I get excited about certain things, so
And
it's
that's
always
the
difficult.
problem. I've read my favorite book 11 times, and each time I'm either driving on the flight or on the walk, and I think, gee, I should write that down, right? I should read the book when I'm sitting down so I can take notes. But it hasn't happened yet. So
What's your favorite book?
Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Okay.
He was the top hostage negotiator for the FBI, turned business consultant, and he also teaches at Harvard, I believe.
Oh wow,
Yeah, really interesting book.
lovely.
Hmm. Where do you live?
In England.
Okay, so it's nighttime there, or
No, it's afternoon. It's 1 in the afternoon, or 10 to 2.
right, okay. Yeah, I'm in Toronto.
Okay, so you're going to be 4 hours in front, maybe about quarter to 6.
Almost 9 o'clock a.m.
Oh, oh, there we are then. Well,
Yes.
that's good. If it was the other way around, it'd be quite late for you just to have a general chat.
Uh, Not really. I enjoy chatting with new people.
Yeah.
Um, and considering freshly on the dating scene again, tend to do a lot of these chats. And
With you.
and I have clients in the construction industry. We redesign businesses. So I have a lot of clients in the construction industry, so we do a lot of these chats as well.
Okay.
So, forgive me, but what were we chatting about?
Nothing specific. You sent me a message saying a bit of your life story when you were 17 and when you was driving through. I glanced over it. It's very interesting, but I was also at the same time writing an invoice out for one of my clients from yesterday.
Okay. What type of business are you in?
Mental health. So
Okay.
um, I love mental health. Well, I say I love it. I don't really love mental health. I'm very interested by mental health, and I do love helping people with PTSD or CPTSD or any sort of issues regarding their well-being.
Okay. Um, I have a client who is in the addiction space. He is actually in the process of selling his business. Um, and I also suffer from depression. I don't know if I mentioned that.
No, you've not mentioned that. You just said it'd be nice for a call, and I thought, you know what, I've got a spare hour, half hour. Well, why not jump on the line and see how you're going?
Yeah, yeah, and I tend to meet a lot of interesting people by saying, "Hey, let's get on a call." Um, I met an older couple that lived in Vancouver, and you know how spammers spoof calls? They use their
Yes.
call. So I called them back, and it was this little old lady. Then the husband jumped on the phone. We talked for an hour and a half. So I've got an open invitation to go to Vancouver and visit them. So
Wow. No, that's
yeah,
that's great.
hmm yeah.
What did you have planned for today?
I was just writing a post for a Facebook group. That's how I create interest. Um, and it was about, I was just chatting with a young family man who's thinking of starting a business, but he sounds terrified. So I was going to ask for some advice as to, what those fears might be and how to engage someone like that in a conversation. I've asked him to join me on the Zoom call. He hasn't scheduled one yet, but you know, um, he sounds pretty terrified about starting a business, and I enjoy helping people start businesses. So I'm hoping to get him on the call, and we'll see what happens. And I was chatting with another gentleman who we started talking about starting a business for him as well. But then he sent me a note saying he's thinking about buying a coffee shop. And he was talking about financing and how it's going to take 12 years to pay off the coffee shop. He hasn't talked about quality of life in running a coffee shop. The coffee shop is making $800,000 a year, about $100,000 in profit. And he didn't say anything about marketing and stuff like that. So I'm hoping to get him on the call and maybe have him realize that, just like a convenience store, you have no life outside the coffee shop, So
Can imagine.
yeah, that's my morning so far. Went on a date over the weekend. It just blew up this morning. So yeah, that's what I'm
A
struggling
good
with.
blowing up or a negative blowing up?
No,
No.
not good. I mean, there wasn't a lot of chemistry there. I mean, she has a beautiful dog. I think there was better chemistry with a dog than it was with
Okay.
her. But
Yeah.
then again, we're both nervous, and and she made a premature judgment. There's no chemistry. And I told her, it generally takes me 2 or 3 dates, and that's what happened the last time with the love of my life, who moved to a different country. If it wasn't for the third date, we wouldn't have dated for 7 years, right?
Hmm.
And I told her that story, and she's still, after the first day, she says, there's no chemistry. So,
Yeah. So I've got a bit of a theory against relationships. I'm just wondering, you said at the start of the call that you have elements of depression, or you are depressed. I don't know if it's clinical, or would you say that your cup is full?
well, my cup is full. That's a good question. Well, I play pickleball. I work 16-hour days.
Mhm.
I don't think it's full with the right stuff.
Yeah.
It's definitely full, but um, I don't think it's full with the right stuff. I would love to, you know, once you've had someone you truly love, then that's missing.
Hmm.
I would like to fill my cup with that.
Yeah. There's going to be a bit of a void with you. Is that, would you say that depression's from the loss of a relationship or the breakdown of a relationship?
Um, it certainly did not make it better. I mean, I've had issues in the past. My little sister's on happy pills. My mother's on happy pills. So I'm sure that has something to do with it, but it's not something that I've ever talked about before losing her.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Hmm. Well, I'm happy to chat away with that if you want to.
Sure, if you think you can help,
Oh,
I would
I'm always happy to help. Okay, first of all, when was the last time you was genuinely happy?
when I was in that relationship.
Okay. Um, and were you happy all the time? You're never going to be happy all the time, but were you genuinely happy a lot of the time?
Most of the time, yes. I would say
Was
90% of the time.
okay. Can I presume it's a she?
Yes, you
Okay.
may. Yes.
Okay. Was she happy?
We've had that conversation. We've always tried to have the conversation like, what makes you happy, or what could I do to make you happy? And she could
Hmm.
not answer that question. And that was kind of a source of frustration
Yeah.
because she couldn't answer that question. And I should give you some background if we're going to go down this road. About 8 years ago, I looked at my life, and I was successful in business and not successful in personal relationships. 2 divorces, broken relationships, train wrecks all over the place. And I thought, I've got to do better because I keep choosing the wrong people. I was not in love with really anyone in the past.
Yeah.
I don't think I even knew what love was, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
And I looked at my life and I said, I gotta fix that. So I had a conversation with my assistant and a few other people, everyone that would listen actually, and made a decision that, I didn't trust my brain to make those decisions for me anymore. So I delegated to one of my assistants. She says, I will make your love decisions for you. And I thought, great, because you can't do any worse. Then we decided to create a system to reach out to at least 1 million women. We
Yeah.
talked to at least 200,000, and I'm writing a book on this. We talked to at least 200,000 women. We had 3 assistants working around the clock, searching for these people. 2 years later, finally met her.
Mhm.
Um, First date was horrible from her perspective, from what she said, because I never smiled. I was too nervous. And so I begged for a second date. She was nice enough to give it to me. Then she says the second date was not great. Then I begged for a third date. This time she came with notes, 2-page notes. And we sat down in the restaurant. We went item by item through the notes, and we, obviously I answered the questions correctly because we started dating. But I felt there was always something missing in the relationship that I felt like I was walking on eggshells because I told her a story about another relationship where she broke up with me 34 times.
Okay.
And 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 through that relationship, we actually dated for 3 years, and she broke up with me 34 times. And I said, I've been on this search, and this was a search to find the love of my life. She was in the middle there. And she was kind of iffy. I didn't know whether she was going to be it or not, but I thought, okay, let's go out a few times and see what happens. And I said, I'm really uncomfortable that I'm going through this process. I'm dating a lot of women, I'm meeting a lot of people, and I'm being very choosy who I choose. And you might be the one, I'm not sure, but you haven't dated, right? You just sit back and wait for the frogs to reach you, and we always want to date above our class. So you're dating below and you're clearly not meeting the right people. I'm trying to reach up to people I definitely do not deserve to date, way above my class. And she says, "Well, I really don't like dating and I don't want to do that." So I forced her to do it. And I said, if we're going to do this, you got to at least have coffee with 20 men, right? Because I didn't want to get into a relationship and have it blow up, 6 months later or 6 years later, right? I wanted to make sure she was invested and she felt that I was the one, as well. Sure enough, that blew up. And of course, I'm telling the love of my life this story, and I said, "You haven't dated either." "Well, no, I have. I'm tired of dating and so on." So, make a long story short, I didn't feel she was quite right in because she was tall, she was 5'9", and she was looking to date someone much taller than I am. I'm 6'1", her brother is 6'4" or something, so she's always dated someone above that was really tall. So that was the first flag from her perspective, and she wanted to date with someone, that was, financially secure. Um, you know, I, I take care of my mother. She wanted to travel around the world. I used to average 5 flights a week. So there was some areas where we didn't quite, um, there might have been some flags for her. And I kind of felt she was kind of partially in, but not all the way in. In fact, about 3 years later, my brother saw her on one of the dating sites, and we were, supposedly exclusive, right? We were talking about marriage and stuff.
Mhm.
So that was the first confirmation that she wasn't in all the way. So I kept waiting for her to, decide that she wanted to be in. And even though we kept saying, we need to believe in and practice fearless conversation, it didn't really happen, right?
Mhm.
And we talked about marriage. We talked about getting, living together and buying a house in Muskoka and stuff like that. So as we are living life, COVID happens, and with COVID mandates, Trudeau, I don't know if you know our fearless leader or not. We see him as a tyrant and a corrupt politician. We don't trust him, and I believe he should be in jail for multiple crimes. Anyways, with the COVID mandates, you don't have a vaccine. And by the way, my LinkedIn profile was deleted 8 times because I was very vocal about this. And so she was as well. And she, when Trudeau said, you can't travel unless you have a vaccine passport and you're fully vaccinated, and the border is going to lock down within 2 weeks. That was her signs, because she was German background. Her father was, lost land, and the father was terrorized because of his German background, even though he was never involved in the Nazi party, but that didn't matter. The family felt they were in danger and they had to get out of Canada. So they had 2 weeks to sell 3 houses, 4 cars, and, furniture in 2 weeks. So here I am helping them do this. And really what I'm doing is I'm helping them slash my throat. Basically, that's how I saw it. Because, she is the love of my life, and I'm helping her move to a different country. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can talk her. I have 2 weeks to talk her out of doing this. And we got closer and closer and closer. She's giving up, we're selling everything. They lost millions of dollars in liquidating everything.
Mhm.
Literally millions of dollars liquidating everything. And now they're living in Mexico. They've got this beautiful house that they rent on the ocean. And even though we talk every day, she's dating someone else now. This, she moved out a year and a half ago. And even though we talked every day, and technically, even though I told her I don't believe in long distance relationships, and I kept hoping she would come back, but when she told me about a month ago that she had met someone else, I knew, that was it, right? And that's when the real depression started.
Okay.
So
How?
that's a story of my life.
Okay. It sounds quite a rocky one.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to cling to a couple of things that you've said before. Focusing on the depression. If we're looking at relationships and you wanting to move on from your last relationship, and you've just said that the
Well,
real depression.
yeah, I don't want to move on. I think that's part of the problem. And the fact
Yeah.
that I talk to her every day doesn't help. And the fact that, I got her involved in some of my CEO club events, and I have to see her every Friday, which, further depresses me, doesn't help.
Mhm.
And she keeps asking me, if you want me to bow out, I'll bow out. But I keep hanging on to this thread of hope that diminishes every time we talk.
Mhm.
Sorry to
Would
cut
you
you off.
say? No, no, no. It's fine. I prefer it because if you've got to say something, I want to hear what you've got to say. Would you say that you're grieving?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, because it's a different kind of loss. Because it sounds morbid, but I'm not meant to be bringing it down to it. But if she were to have died a year and a half ago, or specifically when you two split up, if the end of the relationship come to an end because she had died, that would be a different type of grieving process than her still being in your life, even though she's thousands of miles away. So where you are right now is because of today's technology. I can talk to someone in Japan just as quickly as you can talk to someone in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she's still there and she's still I presume, a vital part of your life may not be business, but the fact that you found someone that works with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you've said earlier on that you were depressed, but then this depression keeps creeping back. How long has depression been in your life?
Well, when she said, we have 2 weeks to move out of this country,
Okay.
that's
So,
when it started.
So the first time you ever felt depressed, almost clinically depressed, not, oh, my dog's ran away from the house for a couple of hours, terribly depressed would have been the first time she said, I need to move out the house. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's when it started. Okay. I mean, it went downhill from there because there was always the glimmer of hope that I can talk her out of it. Then she was gone for 10 months. Then she came back to settle some things, to sell furniture. And I thought, okay, I've got 2 months to talk her out of this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because she kept an apartment she was renting, and she had to clean out the apartment and give up the apartment. And I figured, okay, that gives me 2 months to talk her out of doing this. But the problem is that it's not, if it wasn't for her brother, she is like in a cult. Yeah. And it's her brother that's filling her head with this stuff, because if she was alone and she didn't have to take care of her family, her head wouldn't be filled with this negative stuff. And every morning she wakes up at 6:30 in the morning. The first thing she does, she looks at social media, fills her head with all this negative stuff. And I watch the same stuff, but I can filter it. She can't, right? Yeah. She can filter the bullshit from what might be, right? And she doesn't look at odds. What are the odds of this happening, right? And I keep saying, I still live in Canada. I still live in the same environment that you chose to leave. I haven't been arrested, even though my bank account was frozen for 2 weeks, and I was protesting with the truckers in Ottawa, and I was doing a lot of serious shit that I could have been arrested for because I was very vocal. But she wasn't. She stays under the radar. She didn't even say one negative thing about our government, right? And the chance of her getting arrested and having her assets confiscated would be 1 billion to 1, right? But she doesn't look at it that way. Yes, we're losing our freedom. Yes, we have Bill C-11, C-18, freedom of speech. Our freedom of speech no longer is being eroded, right? But it's being eroded until we get the new government in place, until Trudeau finally gets arrested. We don't know whether Poilievre, I don't want to talk politics, but the World Economic Forum and what's happening in the world, she doesn't like, and it's going in the wrong direction. But could we get it back, right? She's choosing to stop her life instead of living her life.
Mm-hmm.
And, it frustrates me because I can't reach her.
What would happen if you used to move to Mexico, next door to her?
I often thought of that. She kept, saying, I have an open invitation to do that. But my family's here. Over the weekend, we had, a pickleball tournament. Before that, we had a family golf tournament. I take care of my mother. She's 90 years old, next month. All my clients are here, even, in North America. I used to average 5 flights a week to go see my clients. So, I mean, I haven't traveled since then, but then again, since I've lost my LinkedIn profile, I've lost, 90% of my income because all
Mhm.
my clients were coming in from LinkedIn. So that's the price that I paid for that, for being vocal. So, um, if
Okay,
I were
Leo.
if I were to move to Mexico, I would probably lose the rest of my clients.
Yeah, okay. The question is, above everything, what do you want?
I want her to be reasonable and look at stats and look at things and say, hey, I'm not in danger of losing anything if I live in Canada. Thousands of other people, millions of other people live in Canada and are, very happy. Most
Mhm,
people are not even aware, how corrupt Trudeau is. 80% of Canadians are not. So
mhm. But you can't change free will. But
true.
what do you want? What do you want? You don't want to change someone else's perspective. You can only change your own should you want. But what do you want? What's your goal in life right now? If you could just push everything else aside.
My goal in life, well, to get my business back to where it was and to find the love of my life again.
Okay. You say again. So you said to me at the start of this, you didn't really know what love is or was. But
Before her, yes.
so you've learned what love is. You've learned what love is through her.
Hmm.
So are you wanting truly to replicate that love to find with somebody else? Or do you want to re-grasp or try to reharness, kicking a dead horse? Such no offense is needed,
Yeah,
intended.
I understand. Even though, I mean, it was not the perfect relationship.
No.
There were some areas, communication we could have improved upon. There was areas we could have improved upon, and we were trying, but because we were both walking on eggshells, we treaded certain conversations very lightly.
Mhm.
And I learned from that. Um,
Good.
but what's daunting is, the fact that I had to go through about 200,000 conversations with
Mhm.
strangers to find her. It's daunting to go through that process again. And I've started half-heartedly started dating. But the people that I'm meeting, 99.99% of them, you know, are not in her caliber,
Yes.
right?
The problem I'm hearing is your business head is awesome by the sounds of it. You're able to create client leads, you'll be clients and build an empire of business. And you're trying to transfer your business mind into a relationship mind.
Yes, yes,
Does not work.
I understand that. But hold on. Let's not give up
Oh yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
that too easily.
No,
A
okay.
business relationship, what is that? A business relationship is not, a human to mortar. A business is human beings with egos and, it's still human beings with egos, right? You still have to develop trust. What is a romantic relationship? You still have to develop trust. You still have to develop conversation, right? So it's
Yeah.
almost the same skills. It's knowing what you want
Uh-huh.
and designing a relationship.
Okay. Do you overthink?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. And I do agree with that. But because I overthink, I'm a butterfly thinker. I'll think of something here. I need to start right. I always need to write stuff down because I think of something, then I thought of 7 or 8 different things. Then I try and remember the first thing. It's like, no, no, no. I need to rein myself back in, forget, erase all that stuff, refocus on this stuff. What I'm saying is when you were growing up, you had certain perspective of different things, and it seems like you've taken business by the horns, a bull by the horns, if you would. And as yes, you're right. And relationships are based on 2 things, which is love and respect, and the byproduct of love and respect is trust. So absolutely, you should never invest in a relationship. I mean, you and I have just invested in a relationship. As we're talking, doesn't mean that we're going to start. It's not a romantic relationship. It may be a business one. It may be whatever that looks like. Everyone that you meet, you're going to create a relationship with, and then those relationships will be broken. I mean, if you go to a coffee shop and order a coffee, you are engaging in a relationship with that person behind the counter, whether you like it or not. If you don't like them, then you're going to be less trustful or trusting, or you're respectful. Again, respect and love. You're not going to start loving that person, but you're going to start respecting them. And love in itself is a very well, right, what word am I? It's got a dial from love to the hate, and you meet everybody as a neutral, as in the middle, and you then meet friends, and friends is going to be onto the love side of it. You if you don't love your mate in any way you look at it, I mean, many men say, I don't love anybody apart from my wife, but it's the feelings that you get someone is going to be on a scale of love. The higher, the more you want to go into a relationship with them, more of a relationship. If you meet a female that you like, and it's going to create more respect, and love, it's going to create more trust. You're building what I would call as a love triangle. The more time you spend with that person, the more things that you find that you are become more infinitive with. You things that you like, they like. Brilliant. Then it's not only time that you want to spend with them, and the more trust that you have with them, the more things you have compatible with them. So if you find that you're quite compatible with somebody and you want to spend more time with them, that's going to create more of a relationship, more of a trust, more of love. But then if we focus on you and what you can what you can bring to the party, you can bring a lot to your business party because you've got all this background knowledge of all this different stuff. But what is holding you back in a relationship? And what we need to do is just look backwards, back in time. If a Russian doll, if we break down the Russian doll, I'm pretty sure that everybody in the world is going to be somewhat aware of what a Russian doll is. But if we look at Leo, do apologize. If we look at Leo as a child. Okay. Leo as a child. I don't know what you look like a Roy. That's not meant to be offensive. You quite look. I know somebody that's really intelligent, and he's called Roy, and you look very similar, and you have the same behaviorisms. Okay, if we look at Leo as an infant, okay, by the signs of it, Leo didn't know what love was. There's going to be a reason why Leo didn't truly know what love was, and he generally. I'm saying you may have forgotten, kind of a little bit doubtful, but you may have forgotten. But whatever's going on for Leo as a young child has developed into Leo that's looking for the next chapter in his life. And somewhere along those different sized Russian dolls, there's going to be different chapters in your life. But we're looking right now here. And if you had a lack of love and understanding of what love is from a very young age, then that's going to create a learned behavior and learned helplessness. What are you thinking right now?
I'm thinking of grade school because I came into this country when I was 11 years old. And my dad was missing from our lives for 5 years because he came to Canada 5 years before us to build a life and buy a house and get us established before he sent for his family. So he was missing for 5 years, and I was by the time I was 5 or 6 years old, I didn't have a dad anymore. So I'm wondering if there's something there. And I remember in going to school. And I have 5 other siblings. that I grew up with. So, I mean, there was a lot of playing, a lot of joking around, but I remember going to school and being extremely lonely and missing my family, to a point where, I almost started crying and I wanted to get back home. Whether that was because I didn't do my homework and the teacher was picking on me and I wanted to be elsewhere, aside from the classroom, I don't know. But I do remember, having this fear, or I don't know what you would call it, but dread or something like that, where I wanted to be anywhere, not anywhere. I wanted to be home. I wanted to be with my family. And I didn't want to be in school. So I'm wondering if there's something there.
Okay. Well, if we break down what depression truly means, put that into 4 different areas. The first one is isolation. Now you can be in a group of 50, 100 people, but you can be isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in school and you're wanting to isolate yourself, that's still a class of isolation. The second one is suppression. That's when what you want outwardly to project, you have to push inwardly. So if you're trying to suppress your emotions. So if you're sad, for example, and you're trying to not show the world that you're sad, and you suppress that emotion down, whereas literally depression is depressing your emotion. Before you become depressed, you suppress it, you push it right down. And the further you push that one bit of emotion down, what you do is you push every single one of your emotions down. So joy, happiness, all these different emotions that you feel, you push every single one of them down by pushing down on that one emotion. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing now is isolating ourselves, suppressing our emotions. And what's going to be, again, another byproduct of that is our inner critic. That thing that's inside of you telling you not very good, or you shouldn't be in a relationship, or your dad never loved you, and that's why, I'm not saying it's true, but your dad never loved you, and that's why he's gone. As a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, or whatever age you're looking at, this inner critic has an overwhelming voice, and you'll listen to it more than anyone else. The louder it is, the more controlling it is. And the last thing, what depression is something that's unattainable. If you want your dad, if you want to be back home and you can't reach it, it's unattainable. And that's the last grasp that you have to falling into depression. So if you're saying all these things, that you're wanting to be at home, it's unattainable. Wanting to have your dad's unattainable. If you're suppressing all your emotions, if you've got this feeling that you don't know what, but it's just holding you back and you're isolating yourself, you've just given me every single one of those 4 pillars of depression as a child. How can you form a relationship today if your acknowledgement of life as it was as a child is going to be depressed? And that's just going to be perhaps one, again, for the pillars, the 4 pillars of depression is now depression in itself is going to be a pillar of your life. It's going to be an anchor. It's going to be a learned behavior. Now, you might turn to the only thing that is a good distraction, and that's business. I can become brilliant at businessing. I can become, because I can understand it. Like it's attainable to me, and I can control it, and I can manipulate it to an empire. But when I'm looking at my life in my relationship, well, I've got to get somebody else to sort that out. I need to employ someone to find out 20,000 people, 200,000 people to figure out who's best for me. But no one's best for you. Liam, no one's best for you apart from you. You need to learn how to love yourself before you can expect anyone else to love you back. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking, how do I do that?
Okay, so this is where I thrive in what I do. Hypnotherapy. Your subconscious. Imagine, if you will, and you'll have to humor me now. Imagine if everybody you meet is schizophrenic. Imagine your parents are schizophrenic, your best friend's schizophrenic, you're schizophrenic, your Everybody who's ever met a schizophrenic, it's just a way we are as people. When we were children, we were perfect. We were born perfect. We were taught to walk and talk and laugh and joke and interact, or we were taught these things that our adult self are. You as an adult is just a smaller version of you, just wiser. Now, if we look back to that child, the first time you felt isolated, that's going to create a personality, one of the strands. And it's going to have its own perspective. So if you isolate yourself, you might, for example, see a group of people and say, right, I really need to jump myself in there. I need to be a part of this group because I don't like isolation. It's horrible, hate it. Or it's your friend, isolation's your friend. It's a negative friend, but it's your friend because it's a company. And then you're seeing a group of people and saying, oh, that personality that's just been developed, regardless of what it likes to do or not to do, is going to look at that group of people and take over your mind. So you become a bystander in your own head, if you will. Again, human with this. So it jumps up and it takes over, creates cortisol in the brain so it can say, right, okay, everybody, I don't want to be anywhere near you, so I'm going to make sure that you're not going to come anywhere near me, so I'm going to treat you horribly. If I treat you horribly, you're not going to come near me. So I can stay isolated. And then when the cortisol, the whatever chemical is being released in the brain, we have 13 different chemicals that can be released in the brain to create anger, fear. Anyway, that as a byproduct. Again, I love the word byproduct because it is what we are. And if you start from a very young age believing in isolation as part of your personality, but it's going to be sat on the side. And when you get into, let's just say, a year later, you start getting bullied at school. Let's just say you're 6 years old and you start getting bullied. How you react to that bully will become a learned behavior in years to come. You either become a fight or flight response. And that fight or flight response becomes another personality. If someone comes towards me with clenched fists and eye contact, I'm going to get really scared and run away. Or I'm going to clench my fist, stand up, make myself as big as possible, and intimidate that person before we get into fisticuffs. That becomes another perspective, another personality. We can call them egos. We've now got two egos, the isolating ego and the bullied ego, and how you respond differently. 3 years later, you get into a car crash. The next time you go anywhere near a car, you've already got another ego that says, do not go in that car. In fact, you go anywhere near that car and I'm going to shout at everybody, or I'm going to act like a horrible person and nobody actually wants you in that car. Or you would get in that car and you become very scared. That ego then takes over your mind. So now you've got 3 different egos, all of them quiet in the background until you come face to face with that problem. Then it takes over. You become a bystander in your own head and you're just watching. You just become violently aggressive or petrified, scared, or whatever that looks like. You lead your life from the age of your first memory until today. But you've made up lots of different egos along the way. And they're all learned behaviors. What I do with hypnotherapy is I put you in a room with these because they no longer trust you. It's not meant to be derogatory. It's like a demon on your shoulder. They don't trust you anymore. They trusted you before.
The other egos
happens.
don't trust me? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so some of them. Which other ones are taking control are not going to be trusting you. For example, if you get into that car accident at the age of 13, and at the age of 26, you've not learned your lesson, you get back into the car with a group of friends and they're all the same rowdy, your ego would take over. And it either say, no, you're not going in again. I don't trust you to make the right decision for this time. So it then says, I will do everything I can to stop you getting into that car. And then you become anxious or scared. You create anxiety. You don't even want to leave your house anymore. It's taken over your mind. It doesn't trust the decisions for you to make the right decision. Am I making sense here at all?
And I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to understand how that applies to my life. I don't have, I mean, I was in a car accident, but I'm not scared of driving.
That's
And
good. That go
I,
on, sorry.
I'm trying to figure out how that applies to my life. In terms of isolating myself, as an example, on the weekend we
Mhm.
had the pickleball tournament. We had family from out of town, from Winnipeg. I did feel isolated, not because I wanted to be isolated. It's because two of my nieces really don't like the fact that I'm vocal about
Mhm.
some of these things. And I've had encounters with them, and of course it hurts. About a year and a half ago, I was at a family function at one of my sister's house, and I was hugging everybody, saying hello to everybody. And I was about to hug one of my nieces, and she says, "Oh, don't you touch me," type of thing, because I'm not
Yeah.
vaccinated, and she doesn't like my views, and she doesn't like who I was, and how I talk on social media. Um, but I had, I thought that I had eliminated all my family from my social media because they have certain views, I have other views, and we don't talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a black sheep when it comes to my views, and I'm okay with that. But I didn't realize that she felt that way. Obviously, I wouldn't try to hug her if I knew she felt that way. But now her sister feels the same way.
Okay.
So that's really the only isolation I felt, was that, who do I hug, who do I not hug? Because, people are not comfortable hugging non-vaccinated people. And I'm okay with that because we have different views. But in terms of not talking or suppressing my depression, I talk to everybody. I tell people on social media, I'm freaking depressed. I don't want
Mhm.
this. I don't want this feeling. I want this out. And I'll talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Here we are talking. We've never met before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will tell anyone, because I'm not shy about telling people who I am and what I'm
Uh-huh.
suffering with. And I use that vulnerability to connect with other people. If people don't like the fact, or if they makes them uncomfortable, well, they're not true people that I want to get to know anyways, right?
Okay.
So if I can get rid of people and not waste 6 months developing the wrong relationship, I'm good with that,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out, how that applies. And by the way, I was kind of hypnotized on the cruise ship. The guys that come in and entertain people and hypnotize people and make them do silly things. I volunteer for shit like that.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't really feel hypnotized. And he says it's not, you have to be suggestible. And even though I was aware of what I was doing, I did it anyways because I wanted to entertain and I thought it was funny.
Hmm.
Uh, so um, if I could find a way to not be depressed, yes, of course, I would love to figure that out. But
Okay.
I'm also trying to figure out what you said and how that applies to me. Aside from, the dread of going to school when I was 5 or 6 years old and being away from my family, to a point where it hurt, and I would cry,
Yeah.
and I wanted to go back home. Aside from that, I don't really recall any other negative thing that happened in my life that would affect my adult life.
Okay. So it's very good to know that you haven't the demons, as we're speaking about them. Usually, when I speak to PTSD, people with PTSD, they've got a case full of demons on their shoulder. Now, if you're very young and you've come to terms with everything that's going on, and you're not at loggerheads with your inner demons, and they're still on side, then that's great. And I've never really, when I'm working with people, especially with PTSD, they're not high flyers because their demons are pushing them down, which tells me that you
What is
are.
a high flyer? Sorry.
Well, if you said that you've made millions by the age of 17, then you're going to be a high flyer. You're going to be aware. You're going to have an awareness that many people don't. I mean, I think it's 300 billion people on this earth, and most of them are in poverty. If you're able to put your head on your shoulders and stand up and make an earning, even if you've got nothing today, you still were in the mindset to be able to create it beforehand. So you're
Right.
a high flyer.
Well, I started my first business while I was 17. I didn't have any money at 17.
All right, okay.
I lost 7 million in my first divorce, but that's a different story. But at 17, I had to sell my car, and I bought my first house, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was later on that I made millions. So
But that's what I'm saying. You've been in the mindset of self-awareness to be able to financially climb the ladder where other people haven't.
okay,
Is what I'm saying.
Right, I
So
got it.
you're going to have to come to terms with your egos, and they will be on side for you to be able to be in the right mindset to progress in life. You're going to have these egos as such be on your side. However, by the signs of it, when it comes to a relationship, sharing your emotions and being in love with someone, that seems like there's a problem there. It seems like when we're talking about love, and you're not knowing what true love is until you're only recently into your last relationship, that's when you're building the new Leo. Then you're finding new parts about you and saying, do you know what, I do like this feeling of love. This is what it's meant to be like. I want it again, but you want to replicate it. What I'm saying is you should go right back to the beginning and understand why it wasn't there in the first place, and create a new line. Find what was going wrong at such a young age for you to understand who you are now, with the ability to take your smaller, younger self and put him into your heart and say, do you know what, I love myself. I truly love myself. But if you can't truly love yourself, then you cannot look for love in somebody else. It's like a false emotion. And what we're also looking at is love language. If you gave your ex-partner everything that you expected from a relationship, you're giving your ex-partner what you perceive as your love language to her. So if it's gift giving, if it's touch, if it's, I can't remember all of the
I read the book several times, and it's definitely touch on my side. We always give what we need. I agree with you.
But the question is, it's not if you're giving what you need, what did she need, and what did you give her that was deficient?
Right, that's a great question. That's the conversation she would frustrate me with, and frustrate her, because every time I asked, what makes you happy, and she did read the books, and she kind of understood what she needed on a superficial level. But beyond the superficial level, she couldn't say what made her happy. In fact, this is a conversation we've had recently, a number of times recently. She is a brilliant person. She really is. Beautiful, ex-model, tall, but she knows she has a flaw. She knows that she's gullible, and she bought way too many timeshares. This is her admitting herself. And the second flaw, if she does have flaws, is the fact that she takes jobs for salaries, not because it will fulfill her. Okay. She takes a job because of a salary, not because it will be fulfilling, or because she feels she is going to be part of something really special. It's salary only, and she's miserable doing her work. And you know, this has happened a number of times already. And I said, you know, you really should start a business, you know, even though it's going to be, you know, hard work for the first year or whatever, but at least it's yours. You know, and design whatever business. I don't care what kind of business, but do something for you. And she still hasn't done it. So that was frustrating for her. She's frustrated in the way she spends her money. Like she's, you know, she still has millions, but the way she spends money and the way she allows people, an ex-boyfriend, to take a lot of money from her and stuff like that really frustrates her. And she has this open wound in her heart where she's so vulnerable, and that creates a lot of blind spots for her. And part of that blind spot is she doesn't know what makes her happy, because she keeps chasing money and not fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that's why we couldn't have that conversation, because she couldn't answer that question. And another part of the conversation was that, you know, she had two major loves in her life, and her dad chased one of them away because he went to Europe on the holiday, and dad didn't believe he didn't fool around while he was with his buddies in Europe, right? And he obviously didn't, but that destroyed the relationship. So that was a sad part in her life, because she allowed her dad to control her life. Now her brother's controlling her life. And I've told her this, that I believe she belongs to a cult. And it just so happens her cult happens to be her own family that's holding her hostage mentally. And they depend on her for financial support, emotional support, and support in many other ways. So, and that frustrates me, because now I'm not dealing with her mind. I have to deal with her brother's mind, you know, to convince him to allow the love of my life to come back in my life. So that's been
Yeah.
frustrating, right? So she is brilliant, but she has these blind spots that she can't see.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember where at the very start I said, how full is your cup? And it seems like the question is, how full is her cup? If she's dealing with manipulation, coercion, by the sounds of it, her whole life. If she,
Well,
I was going
actually,
to.
let me give you a tidbit more. When her dad, when his, you know, he was a developer, he was building major projects and stuff. When he lost his business, he was forced to go bankrupt. Now the family is paying off his debt, which means she is responsible for her dad's debt. And she just paid the Canadian government, you know, $350,000, you know, going back to stuff that she had nothing to do with. And I said, you know, your dad ran a corporation. Why? And some of the relatives invested in the corporation. And I said, well, you know, if they made money, they weren't going to share that with you. So if they have losses, why are you responsible for losses? Right? So she's paying debt that she has no responsibility to pay debt for. Right? So that was part of frustration.
Yeah. But what we're looking at there is, once again, the relationship she has. What relationship does she have with her dad? And it seems very manipulative. And she's trapped by debt. She's trapped by coercion. It sounds like her family's controlling her. And the more she controls her, the less she's ever going to take a step away from there, until she has the self-awareness to say, hang on a minute here, it's ruining my life. But it's very doubtful that would happen. If she's willing to run the other side of the world from top to bottom, then it just shows the level of control that she's under, and it outweighs the relationship or the love that she has for you. And if we're looking at learned behaviors and learned helplessness means that when she was a child, her parents or her dad was making her do something she didn't want to do. And that was a way of controlling her. And she can't do any other because she knows no other. You can tell her, but you can't change free will. So she's just stuck in the repetitive cycle of parents and family needs her to do this, or now brothers need her to do this, and she has to fulfill that. Why? Because it's a learned behavior. Doesn't matter what you say or what evidence you put in front of her. She's going to know what she knows, and what she knows is what she's used to. I beg to say that if in your relationship you would have reacted or acted like her dad or her brothers, she might still be with you now because that's what she's used to. I'm not saying that you should act like the father or the brothers, but that's the way that she shows love, is by helping people who are controlling her. As much as she loved you or loves you or whatever that relationship looked like when you were both in Canada, the dad, by the signs of it, very manipulative and controlling, pushes away anyone that could ruin the relationship between him and his daughter, because his daughter is giving him something, money. Now, I don't know the full story, but that's, from what you're saying to me, sounds very controlling with manipulation.
Yes, and it goes on today, yes. And that's part of my depression, part of my frustration, is that I can't control it. I'm, generally, I like to think of myself as, a control freak. I have to be in my business, but I can't seem to reach her, and she can't see it because she believes her family would never knowingly do anything to hurt her, but I don't think they're doing this subconsciously, right? Or consciously, but it's still happening. All right, so
but when we're looking at you, though, we need you to move forward in life, because it's evidently very heavy on your shoulders. And if you look at the two things that's, from my perspective, looks quite heavy on your shoulders, is depression and control. Now, you can't control everything, even if you want to. I mean, you can't control the weather. You can't control her dad. You can't control, there's many things in your life you just need to let go.
I agree. You can't control the weather, but you can anticipate the weather and work around the weather. That's still control, correct?
To a degree. Well, you can't make it rain. You can anticipate it and control your life around it, yes.
Right. But if I choose not to design a roofing company that's dependent on the weather, right? I know the weather affects companies, so I'm going to choose to design a company that's not affected by weather. That's still control.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different level of control, though.
Yes.
You are being affected. You are being affected from the weather, and that changes your thought process.
Right.
If the weather wasn't
choosing and designing a company that's not affected by the weather, you are correct. But I know there's some things I can't control, and I know that, and I have to pick and choose my battles. If I don't want to be affected by the weather, I'm not going to design a business that's affected by the weather, right?
Absolutely.
So,
but you still can't stop it from raining.
True. I agree.
And if you're trying to control every aspect, less the actual weather, if we keep that in mind, if you're going to have, if you create a roofing system that's protects you from all types of weather, you're still going to have an unhappy client that wants the sun, that wants the UV, that wants to be in front of it. And they need to walk away from the thing that you created to get the natural sunlight. You can't please everyone. And
I agree.
You can't control everything. So if we're looking at the control, it's good that you want to identify things to control, but if you say, okay, I'm going to create this new roofing system, and you catch cancer halfway through, or you get cancer halfway through, you can't control the cancer. It's going to dissuade your thought process. You're going to give less attention. I'd like to think that you'd give less attention towards the roofing project and could focus on you.
But then again, this is the control part of me. And I'm not as controlling as I'm making myself out to be. I'm not.
No,
When
no,
you
it's fine.
when you search cancers are generally caused by diet. So if I choose my diet, I'm also trying to control my exposure to cancer. If
Yeah,
I stay away from asbestos, I can control lung cancer. If I stay, enough about that.
I'm with you.
Okay.
No. And it's also down to stress. If you used to wake up tomorrow morning and say, "Oh, I'm very ill," and go to the doctor and say, "Oh, by the way, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Leo, but you've got cancer." And it's like, "Oh, I should have stayed less. I should not have burned that bit of toast." Or I should have been less stressed. Too late. You can't control what's happened. You have it.
Right.
There is hypnotherapy and different types of hypnotherapy that can reduce and eliminate cancer. So you can controlling the size of it, the color of it, and the effect it's having on your body to a degree. But you can't control whether you, because everybody's got cancer genes in them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just not have cancer if you choose to. It's not a decision. It's like, all right, I don't want cancer today, but I was diagnosed with it yesterday. Don't care. I don't want it. Don't want it. Therefore, it's not there. Can't control that.
All right. I agree.
So you can always control your environment, but you can't control the environment unless you manipulate it yourself. So how would you be? How within yourself? How much stress is there from day to day?
Um, I deal with stress, but stress can either be seen as an adrenaline rush or fuel, or it can cause, heart attacks and ulcers. Um, I don't think stress is a big part of my life. I
No,
work
that's
when I
good.
want to. I control my schedule. I talk to the people that I want to talk to. I fire clients all the time
Mhm.
that are causing me stress or not doing what they're supposed to do. I fired 5 clients last month. Just said,
Okay,
you're not doing what you need to do. You're wasting my time. Goodbye.
good.
So I don't think stress is a concern.
Okay. If you think of stress like a bow, the more you pull on the string, the more the bow, the bit of wood is stressed.
Right.
And you can create a perfectly flying arrow with a perfect amount of stress. Too much stress, that bow snapped.
Right.
But when we're looking at your ex, how much stress is surrounding you now? Not with your financial, not with your work. It sounds like you've got work to a T. But how much is the love or relations causing stress in your life?
Well, every time I had to get rid of all the pictures with her, every time I open the computer, I still see her picture, and that makes me sad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm not sure that's unless sadness is part of stress.
Definitely say sadness is part of depression.
Depression, yes.
But
Um,
I'd say a sadness is definitely a build up to depression. And stress is a massive contributor to sadness, to depression, to the inner critic telling you nasty, horrible things about you. The stress of not having something attainable to you is definitely going to contribute to the sadness.
of course, yes. Well, and the fact that I know I can find someone like her is just the amount of work, the mountain of work that I have to do. It took me 2 years to find her the last time, and investing another 2 years is daunting. That's
Mm-hmm.
depressing too.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to settle, and
No.
and it's a long list. So, and I must apologize. I have a Zoom call in 4 minutes.
It's no problem at all. Here, mate, I am happy to chat with you again if you want to. I'm always happy to help. And if you ever want to go into hypnotherapy, just give me a shout. I'm sure that I could help you. Two things I'd recommend focusing on is control and depression.
Control. Yeah.
But I'll leave that with you. Right, Leo, sorry, I do apologize again. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And
it was lovely speaking with you. And I'm not going to say that, the egos you were referring to, I'm not going to say they're not part of my life. They might be part of my life, but in a subconscious level, I don't know what's there, right? That's a whole dark area that I don't know about and don't profess to know about. But I would be interested in exploring that. And I enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to suggest to her that she, either reach out to you or find someone to talk to, because I would really like for her to have a conversation, unbiased conversation, a real conversation with someone that's not her family and not me, right?
yeah,
If someone could point out those dark areas that you were pointing out, how she's being manipulated by her family and all this debt and all this crap, that might help her. And if she opens up to the fact she's never been happy in her job ever, that might trigger something. So are you okay? Go ahead, please.
I was just about to say, whatever you say to me, and if I ever speak to her, nothing will be said from this conversation will be to her. And if her and I ever have a conversation, or if we ever work together, I would never ever regurgitate it to you, and vice versa. Sorry,
Right.
what are you going to say?
Unless her and I have the same conversation with you and we're on the same call.
If we're on the same call, brilliant. It's back and forth, and it's whoever's holding the pen can talk. I've done lots of couples therapy when I was in the army. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Are you okay if I publish this video?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, because I think some of my followers might want to reach out to you, because I think if they feel you can help me, they might feel you can help them as well. But a pleasure talking. Let's talk again soon. I think we should.
You've got 1 minute left. Lovely.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye now.